Yeah, I don't deal with that.
It would help.
Deal with that.
All right. Okay, so let's get underway. We are on Makkot, chapter 2, and this is also going to seem a little bit different. Remember last week we talked...
Chapter 1, Mishnah 6.
Didn't we finish?
No.
Oh!
No.
Sorry. I thought we'd finished. Oh, you're right. Look, there's my copy. Set up chapter 1. You could take one and pass them along. Sorry. Maybe we'll get to Makkot 2 then. I thought we'd finished chapter 1 last week. Oh, that's right, because we went... Yes. I remember now why I paused.
I'm a good student. I take notes.
You did. Excellent. He needs everything. All right, so we are on Makkot, chapter 1, Mishnah 6. Thank you very much. And we are continuing the question of perjuring witnesses, right? Edim Zomamim. These are witnesses, remember again, very important, very precise conditions, not only who have given incorrect or false testimony, but could not have been able to have witnessed the original act for which they are giving testimony, because other witnesses can testify that they were not present. That is to say, they couldn't have been present at the time. You okay?
Yeah, it's just, sorry, continue. I need to bring my glasses and see where. Sorry.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I can talk louder if it helps your eyes. Okay, so that is the general category that we are dealing with. So we're going to continue with chapter 1, Mishnah 6, and we need to take care of how this gets implemented. Now, we do this bit by bit, and we go sort of around usually getting readers from the tables, and I like to interrupt. So, Richard, maybe you want to start? So we usually just have like one person read one Mishnah, and then the next person reads the next Mishnah, and so on. But I stop usually at each of the parts that are marked.
Okay, so Michael.
Yep.
1:6.
Just start from perjuring witnesses.
Perjuring witnesses are not to be put to death until after the end.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about the timeline of what we've got. So we had the actual event, which in this case, we're dealing with worst case scenario, which would have been a capital crime. And then you have a trial. And of course, during the trial, you have our false witnesses. After the trial, there is going to be an execution of the person who committed the crime. That's the general timeline, barring the false witness, that we expect from a regular trial, right? The event, trial, including testimony, which, if corroborated, leads to execution. The question is, if I have Edim Zomamim, if I have false witnesses, when do I kill them? Do I execute them here before the trial is over, but as soon as they're identified as Edim Zomamim, or does the trial itself have to end with a guilty verdict for the actual innocent guy who we've lied about, and then we kill our false witnesses?
But we didn't say that we don't kill them, we give them 40 slashes.
No. We're dealing, this particular section is the witnesses who have lied about a crime for which the punishment is execution.
Depends what the...
Right. Remember, there were very special exceptions where sometimes we would lash rather than make them be something they couldn't be. Like, you can't make someone a no longer a Kohen and say that his mother isn't a Kohen if that's what he was lying about. There's no way to work that out. So we would lash in other cases. So here we're dealing with the Stam plain case where there was a murder. I lied about somebody saying he had done it, and I couldn't have done it, and there are witnesses who show up who say I couldn't have been there to see the testimony. But before all of that counter testimony against me happens, they actually find the guy guilty, right? They found somebody guilty, not me, and then I am exposed. So that means he has been found guilty because of my testimony. That's what we're dealing with here. That's the operative.
Still, they didn't kill the...
He hasn't been executed yet. That's the ideal. We're going to get into some more of that in just a second. Make sense? Okay, onward. Yeah, I know, it's one sentence and we've already gotten quite a bit of time.
Because the Sadducees say perjurers, brackets, perjurers are perjurers, that only after the accused had actually been executed.
Okay, go ahead, as it says.
As it says, a life for a life.
Right? So the phrase life for a life, they take to mean that the person who had been incorrectly found guilty because of my false perjurous testimony has died, that's why I'm killed. So if he hasn't been executed, you can't execute me. So they're saying, the Sadducees, probably should have done that in blue. The Sadducees are saying that the death of the false witness only happens after the execution, right? This is the sad position. The Sadducee position is that it only happens after the execution, and that's their drash, their way of interpreting midrashically the phrase "life for a life," because they're saying, how does it make sense that you can execute somebody for false perjurous testimony when no one was executed based on that testimony? Right? That's not life for life. That's life for words. So Sadducees, yes, they've got a logical position, but of course, it's going to be shot down because the rabbis win.
Makes sense because
So that position lose.
Of course, anytime you see a position of the Sadducees, you know, it's going to fail. Now, it's a position that would have been either logical in and of itself or would have been well known in the community, which is one reason why the Mishnah will often talk about it, and the Talmud even more so, to make sure that people don't think, if only they had thought of this argument, then they would have come to this conclusion. They want to rule that out in advance, which is why they include a Sadducee position, even though it's in the Mishnah. I don't think the Sadducees would have included our positions in their books, but that's why we're still here and they're not. Neener. Okay, so part 3, the response.
Pharisaic sages said to them, "It has not always been, but has not it already been said?"
Yeah, even in English, it's awkward.
We shall do to him as he schemed to do to his fellow. Which implies that his brother is still alive.
All right, so here the operative word is schemed, right? He was planning to do to his brother. So how can you say that you have to but how can you say that you need the execution of the innocent before you can execute the false witness? Because if it says he was planning to do it, then that means that it hasn't happened yet, right? I'm planning to plant a garden. I haven't planted it yet.
Say planning to do what? To give up false.
No, planning to cause the punishment. In this case, death.
Yeah,
right? I am scheming to cause his death. Means that it's still in the process. It hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay.
He didn't show up.
Right.
In the court.
I am planning to make my garden. I haven't touched the ground yet, and I'm not going to. So I'm not really a gardener, but I'm planning to do it means that it's in the process. And so that's what the rabbis say. You have to read the rest of the verse. And the rest of the verse says that you do to him what he is planning to do. And therefore, it could not have actually taken place yet. Make sense? Okay, but now we're still stuck.
So the rabbi said that you need to kill before the execution.
So it's not just need to, but can. So let's say, scenario happens is the event happens, there's a trial, I testify falsely, and then everybody says, all right, well, he's definitely guilty, bang, 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 and he's going to be executed tomorrow. And tomorrow morning, some witnesses show up who says, oh, but he was in Hawaii with us on the day of question. There's no way he could have witnessed it. The guy's not dead, but I can still be executed. The Sadducees say, hey, no harm, no foul. If the guy didn't die, then you can't execute me. The rabbis, the sages say, no. If he was found guilty because of your testimony, then you do the punishment to the person that they were planning to do. Right? Even though he wasn't executed. So let's see if I can mitigate your discomfort. Because I don't want you going home being a Sadducee.
And that's that's the last decision.
Well, yes, but they still have to explain what does life for life mean, right?
Because
Chaim Chaim. I mean, what does that mean if we're doing this before the innocent person is executed? What does that phrase mean? All right, so that's what the next section is going to be. Go ahead and actually let's read the next section, and then we'll unpack this in broader context. Richard, if you wouldn't mind, part 4. Yeah, right there.
If so, why does it say a life for life?
Explanation, part 5.
Or it might have been that the perjurers are liable to death from the moment their testimony is. Torah states a life for life. That is to say, they're not executed until after the term.
Okay, so what happens here? They're saying, what does life for life really mean? It means that the guy's life had to be in jeopardy, not he actually was executed. And the only way his life could be in jeopardy would be if the trial was concluded and he was found guilty and he was going to be executed, pretty much on the strength of my testimony. Then his life is in jeopardy, my life is forfeit. That way they still include what life for life means. It still has an important part to the story, but it doesn't mean we have to wait until the innocent guy is dead. Now, again, we're not waiting. It's not like we know he's innocent and we execute him anyway. We're talking about when do we get to punish a false witness. And the argument here is that, according to the sages, you have a window. And the window goes from when the trial is over until, actually technically after, the execution has taken place. There are 2 alternatives to that. One is the Sadducee position, which is only from execution onward. Once the guy's dead, then if it comes to light that I was a lying witness, then I can be executed. But if it came to light any time before the execution that I was a lying witness, I, the lying witness, am not punished. Well, not by execution. I mean, I might be flogged, but I'm not.
That's for the Sadducees.
That's for the Sadducees. For the rabbis, they say no. They're stricter, right? Once he was found guilty, now, if it comes to light that I'm a false witness, I can be executed in his place. But if it came to light I was a false witness before the trial was concluded, then I am not executed in his place, because his life wasn't actually forfeit because of the guilty verdict, because no guilty verdict had been reached. Right? So if you discover that I'm lying while the trial is undergoing, then I do not get executed. The gavel has to be banged. The gavel has to be banged for me to be on the hook for the testimony I gave.
But I have a problem, really, because
You always have a problem.
no, yeah, because for me it makes more sense the Sadducees position, because the idea is you execute someone because everyone is a creation of God,
Right.
Okay? So you kill one innocent person, so you need to pay for that because that's a high punishment. However, if the other person haven't yet been killed,
Right.
it's only in word that was killed, but still is alive, so you cannot punish the other person like the same punishment like the person was already killed because he's still alive.
Right.
So
So
it's consonant.
So let's take a scheme. Let's take a schemer, right? Wonderful schemers, because I know you like to have people who look for loopholes. So let's do it the other way,
Yes.
right? This time I'm looking for the loophole
Okay.
to the Sadducee position. So let's take murder out of it, because murder is very, very strong. Let's take it as a money thing, right? So there's an argument, a litigation over a business contract. And one guy says he owes $5,000, and the other guy says, no, I don't. And I'm a lying witness. And I lie and say, I was there, I saw them make the deal, and absolutely he owes $5,000. And the court agrees with my testimony. And they bang the gavel and says, all right, you owe him $5,000. And then before he pays the $5,000, someone shows up and says, but he was in Hawaii on the day of question. There's no way he could have seen that event and give the testimony. Do I say, almost got away with it, too bad, bye? Or do you actually have to have the money exchange hands before I'm on the hook to not only make the money go back, but also have to pay the penalty?
Something is money, something's life.
No. So tell me about the money first. Of course, but tell me about the money first.
Okay.
In my case, you agree
Money agree 100%.
that even if the money hasn't changed hands, I should still have to pay the penalty. Okay, good. So tell me why life is different.
Because with money, it's just something material. With life, you end the life of something.
Absolutely true. And that's why
So
capital punishment, as we're going to see, is very, very rare in Judaism.
The bar are much higher for life.
But shouldn't the bar be also much higher for the testimony about a life or death matter?
Yeah, but it's not doesn't mean that also the false witnesses say, okay, thank you. Oops, almost I killed my enemy that I hate so much. Okay, bye. See you next week. No, he receives slash. Or they can incite him, but not kill. Kill is very extreme when the other person that didn't lose their life. There are other punishment. Okay, I don't say go innocent at all, but not life, because life is too hard.
So you're absolutely right that Judaism values life very, very highly. But in this particular case, what the rabbis are saying is that we have to be strict to ensure that a person doesn't have a window of opportunity to get away with this, to escape, basically. Right? I mean, this basically says they can force the whole trial to go to conclusion. They can force this person to be considered guilty, and that person can be walked to the place of execution. And during all that time, if someone comes up and says they were lying, not just mistaken, remember we went through that last week, it's not about being mistaken, it's a very, very deliberate form of lying that you couldn't have even been there for the witnessing that you claim to have done. That you can get away with that with just a lash?
Or inside.
Execution, but after the real...
after the innocent person is killed.
No, after the real killer is
oh, so you're saying if I lie about Mr. A and say that he was the killer, but it turns out he wasn't and I was a false witness, and then there's a new trial for Mr. B, who's the real murderer.
Yeah.
When Mr. B is executed, I should be executed too?
Yeah.
Because I don't...
Because always...
But I had nothing to do with Mr. B.
That somebody might say, oh yeah, the other people that said, oh, he was in Hawaii with us. Right. Maybe they lied too.
Which is what we talked about last week of, liars about liars about liars about liars, which is no fun. But the underlying position, and maybe we're going to just have to reach an impasse here, is that the sages are concerned that if you do not allow the punishment to be equal to the threat that this person poses until after their scheme came true, then you may not have enough deterrent. I mean, look at this one more loophole, right? Imagine I am just a vindictive, mean, nasty person, and I don't like you. I mean, and in fact, I don't like you so much that I would be willing to let myself be killed if I could kill you too. So you're telling me I can just come and testify against you and lie about it as long as I'm willing to take my lumps afterwards. And if they don't catch me before you're executed, I've got no real penalty. I can just try again next week.
No, you have a penalty.
Oh, so they're going to whip me a bit.
Or kick you out of the community and everything. The community was
but there are different standards for that as well. But so, at least I can try. Whereas this, I would not be able to get my goal, which is your death, and I'd still be executed. Which is the bigger deterrent? If I know that as a chance I'll die without getting you, chances are I'm not going to use this. If I think there's a chance I can get you and maybe me at the same time, I'll take those odds if I'm a really mean, nasty person. So we're going to have to leave it there. But the halacha is that we do have to wait until the end of the trial, but not until the execution. And if the evidence comes out that I was a lying witness. Maybe I should make someone else the lying witness. I feel bad keep talking about my execution. All right, Makkot 1:7. Who's going to volunteer to read the next piece? Thanks, yeah.
Person should be put to death only on the testimony testimony of 2 witnesses, or 3.
Right. So,
Deuteronomy 17:6.
so as long as we're talking about executing people in general, or not, sorry, in specific with regards to perjuring witnesses, let's refresh what it takes to execute somebody just in a normal situation, with or without, well, as you're going to see, with honest witnesses. What does a normal capital trial look like or need? And the answer is that Deuteronomy says you need 2 or 3 witnesses. All right, interesting phrasing. Let's pull it apart.
The testimony is sufficiently established. 2 witnesses. Why does Scripture specify 3?
Right? So wait a minute. Torah doesn't waste words. Cardinal principle of midrashic exegesis. Torah doesn't waste words. So if the Torah could have said 2 and been done with it, why does it add the word 3? And if it needs 3, why would it say 2? Right? It's not like, me. I throw extra words into sentences all the time. The Torah doesn't do that because the Torah. All right, so this is to understand our perjury witnesses, not general testimony, but the fact that there are 3 people are lying about having the crime when they were in Hawaii, and there are 2 people who say we saw them in Hawaii. You might have thought, hey, 3 versus 2, the 3 people win. Right? 2 people can take on 3. It's not about who has the most witnesses. It's about which witnesses are unimpeachable, right? It's quality, not quantity. Exactly, which is going to be reinforced in part B.
B. How do we know that 2 or 3 can even incriminate 100?
Right? It's like you got 2 witnesses who says, I saw 100 of them in a convention in Hawaii, and they're all lying when they said that they saw this murder happen. Just 2 of us versus 100? If our testimony is impeccable and unimpeachable, then yeah, we absolutely can incriminate all 100 of them. And how do we know that? The Torah states.
The Torah states witnesses.
Right, so they use the term for witnesses, the plural, edim, and they say, it can be 2, it can be 3, or it can just be edim, right? And any number of edim would be sufficient. Make sense? All right, this part we all agree about. Part 2.
Rabbi Shimon says, just as 2 witnesses are not put to death until both have been incriminated as perjurers. So 3 are not put to death until all 3 have been incriminated as perjurers.
All right, so this is lie together, hang together. Right, so if the witnesses come and say, well, I saw him in Hawaii, but I didn't see him, then Mr. Hawaii doesn't get executed. Right? The unit of witnesses can be executed for their perjury, not individuals that are part of that unit. Making a little sense? And the explanation they're going to give is very similar. So part A.
How do we know that 2 or 3 can even incriminate 100? The Torah states witnesses.
Same rationale. We're good? Pressing on. Part 3.
Rabbi Akiva says, third witness was only mentioned in order to be stringent upon him, make his judgment the same as the other 2.
Okay, so what does Rabbi Akiva say? He's saying, well, if you got 3 guys who were really in Hawaii, and he added himself to the 2, you might think that the first 2 were the only ones that were actually guilty because we technically didn't need number 3 because he was a bonus witness. But by saying 2 or 3 witnesses for giving testimony, then you should know any lump of witnesses will all suffer the same fate. You won't say just the first 2 were the only ones needed. All of them are conspiring, all of them get punished. Make sense? Onward.
A. And if Scripture thus penalizes one who consults with those who committed transgression, and as if he is actually one of those who commits the transgression, how much more so should we consult should he who consults with those who perform commandments receive a reward as if he is actually one of those who perform the commandment?
All right, so Rabbi Akiva, as is often his style, wants to finish on a high note. And he says, yes, it may sound a little weird that this third guy who joined in with the two liars is getting the same punishment as them, but that's because he chose to join in this conspiracy. But look on the bright side. If you join in with people doing good stuff, that's a mitzvah too, right? That you get credit for doing the good stuff. So if I conspire to teach more children, if I conspire to help more sick people, if I conspire to feed more hungry, even if I didn't actually do all of the feeding, healing, and teaching, if I'm part of the group that's scheming to do these mitzvot, these good things, I still get credit, right? I'm contributing to the fulfillment of these commandments, even if I'm not actually doing it materially myself, which is a very nice thing to try and remind ourselves after a rather bleak little set. All right, a little bit more testimony questions. Natan, you up for reading?
Yes.
And you've got your edition, so the words will be slightly different than what other people have.
Makkot chapter 1, Mishnah 8.
Mm-hmm.
Just as the testimony of two is void if one of them is a relative or ineligible, so is the testimony of three void if one of them is a relative or ineligible. So the same rule.
Well, it's the same, but here we're talking about just general disqualification, not about lying. So imagine that three of us come together to give testimony about a contract, and it turns out that the contract involves my brother, right? Because the three of us came to give testimony, because I was touched by it, we are all wiped out as witnesses, right? I couldn't have given the testimony in the first place, and if I'd come on my own, the court would have disqualified me because it's my brother. But because we joined our testimony together, you are now tainted by my association. And therefore, all of our testimony is disqualified. Make sense? Okay, and it is following the same pattern. Now here, there's not necessarily any criminality. It's just, if you come together as a unit, you are treated as a unit. And if part of your unit is flawed for this testimony, not necessarily malicious, but just because you're related, then all of you are flawed. Part 2.
How do we know that it is so in the 100? Because the Torah says witnesses.
Exactly. Same proof text that we've been using from Mishnah 7. And then the next section, Rabbi Yosef.
Rabbi Yosef said, this is only so in capital cases. But in monetary suits, the evidence can be sustained by the rest.
Okay. Rabbi Yehuda is going to disagree with that, though. You okay?
Yes.
Read the next section, because this is a bit of an argument, so we want to get both parts of it.
Rabbi says, it applies alike in monetary suits.
Right. He says it's the same, right? You can't divide up witness bundles for money cases, and you can't divide them up for capital cases. But Rabbi Yossi, as you saw, said you can divide them up for money cases. But part 3 is going to give us a general rule.
It applies alike in monetary suits and in capital cases if they warn them. But if they did not warn them, it does not apply. For otherwise, what should two brothers who saw one committed among the two?
Okay, I'm trying to hear you. I'm trying to follow your translation, which is a little bit, I think, more cumbersome than ours. So let me read our translation as well. All right, this is the rule when both disqualified witnesses warn the transgressor. But when they did not warn him, what could two brothers do that saw someone killing a person? Right? So how can I, if I'm out with my brother walking, the dog, and we see somebody murdering someone, well, are we not allowed to give testimony because we're related to each other? Right? So that would be, it would make it impossible for brothers to ever give testimony. So it is a little bit more nuanced than the position would make you believe. That there are cases where if there are only certain witnesses, then we will allow them to give testimony. Does that work? Maybe? Looking at our clock, I really want to finish.
So also for monetary and also for capital cases, we can accept brothers.
In certain circumstances, not if they are touched by the case in the sense that they are the beneficiaries of it, but if they are related to each other, in certain cases, yes, we can. Now, I will say this comes up. I mean, how often do you think Eidim come up in modern Jewish life? It's not like we're usually doing contracts with Jewish Eidim. It's not like we're usually doing murder trials with Jewish Eidim. Where it does come up fairly often is in ketubot, when you have somebody who witnesses the ketubah. Well, people will often invite their family to the wedding. What a surprise. And trying to find two witnesses who aren't related to the bride and groom and who are not related to each other can sometimes be challenging, which is one of the reasons why before the wedding even happens, when I'm meeting with couples, I tell them we have to have witnesses that meet the following criteria, and I run down the whole list for them. And they look at me like, like, well, if you don't have any witnesses, I can provide witnesses. And I've sometimes had to use ringers to fill in the numbers because, you know, they had 80% of their guests were family and the other 20% weren't Jewish. So they didn't have anybody that was available, or even of some of the Jewish people, they were very secular and unable to function as witnesses. So that's where these witnessing rules still do apply.
You say that in some occasions, yes, in some not here.
Right.
By the Mishnah, which
go read the Gemara.
they explain which are the.
Yeah. I mean, the laws of Eidim are much more complicated than what we have here.
You know what I was thinking? Not related with that.
Yeah.
One directly. That I don't know when you plan to finish all our Mishnah studies and move on to Gemara, like a review.
Right. Go back to
Shabbat, but through the Gemara, so to review and go more deep.
It's you go deeper. You know, the issue is Gemara doesn't fly along like this, right? So a daf of Gemara could take as long as a chapter of Mishnah and cover 5 different topics, whereas Mishnah is usually focused on one topic and still digresses a little bit. Gemara digresses all the time. So the rate that we've done Mishnayot, it would take us 10 times as long. At least. No, I'm just making sure that people. I'm just sure that people understand that it's not like we're just gonna. Okay, so we did brachot. We're gonna bang through brachot. You know, we did bava kama. We're gonna bang through bava kama. It's like, no, bava kama is gonna take like 2 years. If people are willing to do it, I am always happy to teach it. But I want to make sure that there's a.
Wednesday night.
Well, thank you. Trust me, there's plenty more Mishnah that we haven't studied yet. We're not running out. So we're not in danger of finishing.
But every time we see something interesting, you need to study Gemara.
Oh, of course.
I want to study Gemara to see really.
Thank you. I've done my job.
Yeah.
You just told me now you want to study Gemara. I have done my job. If I've made you want to learn more, then yes, success. And yes, and then once you study the Gemara, you're going to have questions and you want to look it up in Rambam. And then you look it up in Rambam and you want to see how the two, and you want to see the Beit Yosef, and you're going to want to see, and you want to see the Tosafot, and you're going to want to see the Rishonim and the Achronim. And that's called Jewish learning, right? Is following those threads wherever they go and going deeper and deeper. And yes, the main topic you finished and you understood just from the Mishnah, and you understood all of the basic side topics from the Gemara. But now there are 3rd level, 4th level, 5th level ideas and topics that you want to keep chasing.
So we can have headlines about the differences. You know, when you can use the Mishnah or the Gemara in that case, brothers, and when not, when you can use brothers.
You want to do what digression for that?
If you
they're hard.
Not
off the top of my head. I have to go because it's detailed, and it's not, like I said, it's not something that I have to do as practical halacha day in, day out. Because for ketubot, I don't allow brothers to testify. I need unrelated witnesses for weddings. Never.
And what happened if they converted and they're only that family in town? No, even Jew.
Then so, I get a guarantee from the family and the names of the witnesses they will be using before the ceremony. If there is no one that they have to provide, I will get people from our congregation, and they will come for the ceremony and they don't go to the party. Right? They will just be there for the chuppah, and they will be there for the ketubah signing and all of that. And then after the ceremony, they go home, and I thank them profusely for helping to make it a kosher wedding.
What happens if you are
I don't do destination weddings.
Yeah, but well,
Yeah.
around the towns, okay, in the nowhere, okay,
right?
and suddenly you go to a little township, a little shtetl. There are two Jews. They say, "Oh, we want to marry. We are the only family, the Jewish family here. We don't have enough. There's not any other Jew, and you're far from any other place."
If
What do you
I was a wandering rabbi
Yes.
and I knew that this was a likely scenario,
Yes.
I would study the laws of Edim a lot more before I left home.
Oh, okay.
But I have the luxury. I have the luxury of being able to meet with these couples usually a year in advance, to go through all the things, to keep nudging them until they give me the names. And in the end, I have a congregation that I've never had a trouble getting a dean from for something like this. It's only happened like twice in the 8 years that I've been here in Orlando, where there hasn't been anyone from the family. I mean, anyone except the family that was there. So I have never been pushed into that corner yet. If I knew that I was traveling to Alaska by airplane, and flying into small towns, I would have to double check all these things much more in advance, or going down to the Amazon, exactly. Then yes, I would be getting all my ducks in a row on a whole different level. And that would make a difference. But I am lucky I live in Orlando.
What is, what witness is qualified to be in a wedding, let's say?
It's not Shomer Shabbat and Shomer Kashrut.
It is reliable witnesses, right? So the question of what does it mean to be Shomer Shabbat and Shomer Kashrut is something that the different movements have different stringencies on, right? So somebody who, for me, somebody who is a blatant atheist or has converted to another religion, someone for whom Judaism is a joke or tangential in their life, then no, I don't accept them as an aid, as a witness. But somebody who Judaism is important to them, Judaism matters to them. They may not be coming to shul every week. They may not be studying Mishnah with us, but they take Judaism seriously and they understand what it means to be an aid. Yes, that is usually sufficient for me.
I remember when I got married, Rabbi was an Orthodox
Mhm.
rabbi.
He had two guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he actually used two of my friends.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Because
But
most
they
Orthodox,
had to be one that he preferred somebody that is Shomer Shabbat.
right?
But we couldn't find anybody.
That-
Only one.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
One
In
Shomer Shabbat.
most Orthodox rabbis that I know nowadays, they don't ask you who you want to be your witnesses. They show up and they have two guys with them. Done. Right? There's no discussion. Even if they say they're Shomer Shabbat, I don't know if they're Shomer Shabbat the way I want them to be Shomer Shabbat. And so I'm going to bring my two guys that I can rely on. That's the common Orthodox standard now. Now, I don't know if you're an Orthodox rabbi flying into the Amazon, what you do. My guess is you would probably wonder what Orthodox Jews were doing living in the Amazon that wanted to get married.
But the Chabad, every place there. Then you find Chabad ship there.
But that doesn't mean they do weddings there.
No, but I remember that when we married in Quito,
Mm-hmm.
also they were looking, and it wasn't conservative rabbi, but
Right.
still they were looking someone to Shomer Shabbat
Right.
and Kashrut, and there were none in the synagogue, so
Mhm.
we are lucky that there are two guests from Colombia that they were.
Right.
So they were our witnesses, and they were looking for Shomer Shabbat and Kashrut.
That worked out. So you're really married. Okay. Makkot.
Makkot, exactly, Makkot.
1-9. I believe we're back around the table.
Number one, two persons see him, transgressor, one window. Two other persons see him from another window. One standing in the middle points him. Then, some on one side, some on the other side can see one another. They constitute together one body of evidence. But if they cannot see one another,
Okay. I'm going to try and draw this. This is not an easy idea to get clear. So you've got the deed happening here in the middle, right? And we've got a house over here and a house over here. And you've got your window and your window. And what order do they do? From one window, we've got our two guys here. And from another window, we've got two guys there. We're doing okay? And we have the guy standing in the middle. Exactly. Who's giving the warning. I remember warning is essential for a capital case in Judaism, right? If you murder that person, you will be executed. Yes, I know, it's the acknowledgement, and I'm going to do it anyway. Then now we're in a real capital case situation. So, okay, so here is the question. The question is, let me change colors. What is the sight line between the two houses? If house A can see house B and see the witnesses in the windows of house B, then all of this is one group of witnesses, right? So that if there's a problem, as we're going to see, they're all bound together. On the other hand, let's imagine that there's a wall between them, right? Or another house, and so maybe they're on like the corner of a street, and they're looking out into the courtyard, but they can't see each other. Then this is one unit, and this is one unit.
And what happens, Rabbi, if one house has one witness and the other one has two witnesses, and they don't agree what they saw?
Then we don't convict.
But you have two on the other side. You say that you need 2 or 3 witnesses.
But you said they don't agree. Do you mean like
between the 1 and the 2? In one
right.
house is one witness, only one, and the other house there are 2 witnesses.
Oh, then okay. If the 2 witnesses,
one house is something, right, and the other one is something different.
Then the judges have to decide who is the more accurate witnesses. But the one witness can't give testimony by himself, right? If I see a murder,
he can use the warning person.
If I see a murder all by myself, I'm not able to give testimony, right? If someone else will join with me, then I can give testimony. So yes, if I can join with him, then we can give testimony. But if I see it all by myself, I'm not able to give testimony.
What happens 3 and 2? So we cover that.
Right.
So what happens?
And 3 says that I saw the murder, and the 2 people say there was no murder, it was an accident or something like that.
You have enough people, okay, for as a witness.
Yeah.
But who do you
believe?
Trust or believe if they are the same location, same distance, but they so completely different?
Welcome to the job of the dayan, of the judge.
Who do you know who is the false witness?
By giving, well, not a question of false,
mistake.
By mistake. Let's do mistake, right? It's a question of examination, cross-examination, asking questions, asking for details, trying to get additional, what was the street, what did the street look like, who else was on the street, all of those details. That's how the judges worked, was by drilling into the witnesses to see if they could find flaws in their testimony. And if they found a mistake, if they found a flaw, then they would throw out their testimony. So if one side says, we saw this happen and it was a donkey that killed him, and the other side says, no, we saw it and it was Mr. Smith killed him, if they can break the testimony of one of them, find a flaw, then the other one, and the other one is not broken, like the other testimony is still coherent and doesn't have any errors, then you go with the testimony that seems correct.
So
no, it's okay. It's just
I was coming back with something that we learned in Baba Gama, one of the Babas, okay?
There's no Baba Gama.
Yeah, that's why.
That's Greek.
Yeah. What happened is that we have one house, okay?
Right.
Are the owners of one cow, okay?
Right.
The other house is owner from the second cow.
Right.
But something happened and burning something in the field. The cows ran, all of them,
right?
And suddenly one guy was in the middle, and both cows that looked exactly the same passed through the witness.
Yes.
And through the guy
and killed
the guy.
Right.
And if your cow killed the guy,
we went through all of that discussion.
So what do you do that? Because they are exactly the same. How can you decide the Dayan who is right. Correct or not if they are exactly the same situation?
If you go back and review, the answer that's found there is if there is no way to prove that it was the bigger cow, the smaller cow, the brown cow, the black, if there's no way to prove which cow was actually the cow, then no one's guilty. Because you know he's dead, but you don't know who did it. And if you know that he's dead, but not who did it, then who can you punish legally? Who can you punish justly? But you don't know which cow. Yeah. Right? So we do a big barbecue. We banged our head on this one when we went through it the first time. which was it looks like you get away with it. And the short of it is, yeah, if 10 people are all in a room and there's a flash of light and somebody falls over dead and you've got 9 suspects and there's no way to prove that one of them did it, but you're sure one of them did it, they all go free. Right? That's actually called justice, as opposed to bloody murder of 8 innocent people, because only one of them actually committed the crime. 8 other people just happened to be in the wrong place. And Judaism is adamant, as we might see tonight, that we not kill innocent people, even at the risk that we might be releasing guilty people. All right, let's finish up Makkot 1:9. And then I think, because I really wanted to get to 1:10, but go ahead and finish 1:9, yeah.
Rabbi Yossi says, he's never put to death unless 2 says,
Okay, and part 3.
another interpretation by the mouth, that the Sanhedrin shall not hear the evidence from the mouth of the
Right, so this is not meant to be a counter opinion, but just an additional insight, which is that the Sanhedrin had to be able to hear the evidence directly. They didn't have to be able to speak the language, but they had to be able to understand it when they heard it, so that the interpreter would not be perhaps a key player in how the testimony was being given. So to be on the Sanhedrin, you had to know lots of languages to be able to fulfill this role. Okay. Do you have time for sticking around for just one more?
Of course.
Okay. Okay, well, it's not for me. It's for the Mishnah, but this is a very famous one. Yerach, I think it's a famous one, yeah. And the Talmud goes into much more detail, sorry, but this is a good start. So we're on 1:10.
One fled after having been convicted at a court and again comes up before the same court. First judgment is not set aside.
Right, so running away doesn't help you. Right, if you're guilty and you run and then you come back, you're still guilty. And you're still going to get the punishment that was decided by the first court. That's going to be
not extra.
What?
But not extra.
Well, I mean, you're getting to be decided for the first court. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you committed a new crime,
No, I know, but
then
you don't receive extra because you ran away.
no,
No.
exactly. Yeah, that is not an additional penalty. Right. Onward.
A. Wherever 2 witnesses stand up and declare, testify that so-and-so was tried and convicted in certain court, that so-and-so were the witnesses, the accused is executed.
Right. So if someone shows up in court and 2 people say, wait a minute, we were in Jerusalem last year and we saw him in the trial, and Mr. A and Mr. B were the witnesses for that trial, and the court ruled that he was guilty and should be executed, and then he disappeared. And here he is now in, Tel Aviv. There was no Tel Aviv back then, but work with me. Then he is executed, right? That is evidence of his guilt. I mean, nowadays we want paperwork and all of that. This was considered paperwork back in those days. Of course, those witnesses would have to be checked and verified, blah, 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 blah. But the original verdict would not be re-examined. Only the accuracy of the testimony of the people who claimed that they saw the court happen and saw the verdict reached.
We couldn't contact the judges in Jerusalem.
They didn't need to. Right? I mean, if the evidence of we were there and we saw it is believable and verifiable, that is paperwork in Jewish law, right? Testimony is better than paper under Jewish law.
And what happens if they run to a different city, okay, and the other city, someone can go to visit on Shabbat and say, oh, I know that guy, he ran from our city.
Right.
They can execute, they can implement the...
One guy? No. They could arrest him and investigate, but one guy is not enough to convict him. I mean, not to accuse him of having been convicted in another court.
Also, you need to...
Always. You never execute unless you've got 2.
And of course, not relatives. Not the same family.
Yeah, exactly. Unless they're the only 2.
I find it's a little tricky here, because you have 2 people that live in Tel Aviv and say, oh, this guy was convicted in Jerusalem.
Right.
Automatically you go and execute this guy.
You still have to investigate their testimony.
Yeah. They need to.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's investigating their testimony means, what were you doing there? What did you see? How was the court? Who were the judges? What was happening? You want to make sure that they are talking about a legitimate case and they have enough detail that you're sure that they're not just making this up.
It's not much easier to send someone to check with that city if it's true, no?
So what's that person going to do?
Oh, two people. Sorry, it must be two. Okay, two people.
Okay.
Go,
So
okay,
why would you trust those two people rather than the first two people?
Because you send them. Okay,
So two guys
the
walk outside the city. They take a little vacation between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They come back the next day and say, yeah, we were there. They said totally this is what happened.
Because they are false witnesses, so we could kill them after that.
Yeah.
Okay,
you're
so
right.
They will be very concerned.
But my point is, well, so could these people be false witnesses about having seen the trial? Right? So there is no silver bullet to prevent somebody from lying. That is what this whole topic is trying to wrestle with, which is when your testimony is based entirely upon testimony rather than on documents, which could be easily forged, or on some other circumstantial evidence, which could be easily misunderstood. I mean, how many people have we executed in this country, even with DNA evidence, that turned out to be incorrect? There is no silver bullet to be 100% sure. And so they go with what they can, which is testimony. And the testimonies of you two is as good as the testimony of those two. It's why should I say that your testimony is worse than theirs just because I know them? Now the court is becoming biased. If the only people's testimony that the court cares about are the people that the court likes, then the court is now going to drift in one direction.
What happens if two members of the court go to Tel Aviv and to check if it's true or not?
They are still just two witnesses, and now they can't serve on the court because they can't cross-examine their own testimony. Right? They did. There were paper records, but paper records were not considered conclusive. It's like I always tell couples about the ketubah, right? The ketubah is proof that there are two people who are willing to testify, and that when they testify, they will agree to what's on the ketubah. But the ketubah itself, without signatures on it, even if the bride and groom sign it, even if the rabbi signs it, that's nothing in Jewish law. Right? You could have a picture of them holding up the ketubah at the wedding with their own signatures on it, but if it doesn't have a deem, that document is just lovely and pretty, but it's not a legal document. And with the witnesses' signatures on it, it's still technically not a legal document. It's simply an invitation to go hunt down the witnesses who will tell you that, yes, they were there for the wedding and that this is what they saw, so-and-so and so-and-so do such and such. Judaism, we rely on people for our ultimate proof, for our ultimate testimony.
Those witnesses are dead. What do you do?
Then you begin to dig to find other witnesses. And you can rely on the document, which is why
you cannot trust the memory because the original one said.
Of course you can trust the memory. That's the only thing we've got. Your memory of yesterday is not as good as you think it is. But that's all I've got. Right, what else am I going to work with? Right, there's a very sense of legal realism within Jewish law, which is totally different than the American logical positivism belief that somehow we are getting at the truth perfectly and beautifully within our court system. Like, you're kidding me? Our court system is trial by combat. Except instead of people with swords, we have two lawyers or lawyer teams that each are doing their best to defeat the other lawyer, not to find the truth. So why would you expect that's going to generate more truth than an impartial group of judges who have to work together in very complicated ways to themselves investigate the witnesses and do the best they can to get the evidence out of the situation?
Because you cannot trust memory. So you have forced ignition, forced.
And you can trust lawyers? Do you know how many prosecuting attorneys in this country have had enormous problems with the sharing of evidence with the defense attorneys or the inappropriate handling of material and evidence? It is in the thousands. And yet we still trust them to prosecute cases in this country, right? So you can't trust anyone. But what you can do is build up a system where trust is the only thing we've got, with the check and balance that if you absolutely screw this up, you are going to be in so much trouble that it's not going to be a $500 fine, but you will receive exactly the punishment that you were trying to manipulate the court towards.
We saw a lot of Mishnah about false memory. Which one?
Oh, we talked about that before, about witnesses could be wrong about topic A, but not topic B, and things like that. Yeah, yeah. It's hard. All right, but let's finish off part 3. This is the famous bit.
Oh, a Sanhedrin that executes once in 7 years is called murder.
Right. So if you have a Sanhedrin that actually executes people just once every 7 years, it's considered bloody. Right? That is a bloody Sanhedrin. That is a murderous Sanhedrin. Onward.
I think we would think about America.
Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says once in 70 years.
He even adds it more. He's like, no. If you kill them all every 7 years, that's still 7 times too much, or 10 times too much. Right? You got to push it back. There shouldn't be any at all. Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva say, had we been members of Sanhedrin, no person would ever be put to death.
Right? Yeah. So how can they say that?
Two liberals.
Basically, they're coming back to your position. So don't criticize them too hard, right? They're basically saying there is always doubt, right? There was always doubt, and because there was always doubt, how can we take someone's life? That's their underlying position.
I think that's what is going on in Israel. They have calls all the time to act, death sentence.
Right.
And they refuse to do it.
Right. Well, hundreds of people in America have been executed falsely just in modern times, and that's not even including historical times. So, and that's not even with people being conspiratorial. It's not schemes. It's just mistakes.
I know. I see every day, also as a realtor, also as a teacher, the people have sometimes false memory.
Yeah.
And not because they want it.
No, just
with the time you want something,
Yeah.
and at the end, what you want it becomes to be your real memory.
Yeah.
And it's frightening because yes, mistakes happen. That's why I agree with Rabativa about that.
False memory is such an interesting phenomenon. What was his name? There was a
podcast.
I can't remember.
We talk about that. The podcast.
Yeah.
The Canadian guy.
The
Yes.
The news reporter who said that he was on the helicopter that was under attack in Iraq.
Brian Williams.
Thank you, Brian Williams. And his career was totally destroyed because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone said he's lying. Because everybody would know whether they were really on a helicopter that was under fire or whether they weren't. And the truth of it was, when you followed the progression of how he told that story, you could see him changing his opinion. And it wasn't that he was lying. He just kept rewriting the memory in the way that we do. They did the same study with 9/11. When that happened, a group of researchers jumped on the opportunity, sad as it was, to get people's memory of what did you think, what did you feel, where were you on that day? And they got it like the next day. They sent out a huge call all across the country to get researchers to catalog this. And then they came back 3 months later, and a year later, and 5 years later, and they showed them their own written handwriting saying, I was, here, or I was, getting coffee, or I was with my grandma. And they said, no, that's not true. That's not what I was doing. And it's like, but you wrote it. It's like, I don't know why I wrote that. That's not what I was doing. Because now they remembered it totally different.
That was a very good podcast.
Yeah, that was Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. If you don't listen to his revisionist history, it's a great podcast. He's got 2 seasons out so far.
I think he finished the 3rd.
Did he finish the 3rd already? Oh, okay. I'll have to go double check. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon say pretty much he can't do this because we're always going to find a hole in this evidence, in this testimony, and no one should be killed if there's any doubt. However,
Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel remarked, they would also multiply murderers in Israel.
All right, so you think you're doing a favor to everyone by not wanting to accidentally put someone to death because of this. But if it becomes known that there is always going to be a loophole found for you, does that take away the deterrence of knowing that if you murder someone, you will be murdered?
Always we are liberals and conservatives.
Well, so the question here is...
No, it's the same position today.
Right, but so here's the challenge. In my opinion, what Ramon Gamliel is saying, Shimon ben Gamliel, sorry, is saying is not you got to kill a few people every so often to keep everyone in line, because that makes him a murderer. For him to say, you know what, even though you could find a reason and there's justified doubt in this case, execute them anyway, just to keep everyone else in line. What I think he's really trying to say is, as I phrased it, is you cannot publicly say that you will not execute someone. It may be that no one gets executed, but each case should come down to the wire. Each case should be a nail biter. Each case, the person should be unsure of whether they might be executed. But if you just make a blanket statement that no one gets executed, then yes, you've removed deterrence from the picture. So you're not allowed to execute people just to make a point, but you're also not allowed to say you won't execute people to make a point. You actually have to do the hard work each and every time. And each and every time you come to court, maybe this time that person's going to die. And each and every time the person comes in, no matter how good the evidence is, maybe this time there's actually something that's a problem. You may remember when we studied Sanhedrin, if the court votes unanimously to execute someone, they are not executed. Because there's no way to have unanimity in any kind of case that involves life and death. And if you are too confident, you made a mistake. It's like when you finish the test in school and you're like done half an hour before all the other kids in the classroom. You're like, did I do something wrong? Was there a backside to the quiz? You begin to doubt yourself if you feel too sure. And that's what our courts are trying to instill in us. We should never feel too sure. But we also don't go out announcing that we're not going to execute anyone ever again.
We had a case actually here in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
The Attorney General for Orange County
was
fired by the governor because she refused. There was a killer.
Oh, yes. That was a few years ago, yes.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Maybe.
Yes, because she was challenging the death penalty as a whole concept, yes.
Yeah.
And
he fired her.
Right.
He not completely fired her. He took the
removed
case from
her. Yeah, exactly.
From the case.
And, that's a tricky situation because on the one hand, protesting what you feel is an unfair law, which I have to agree that in most cases, American judicial systems are not consistent in implementing the death penalty, which makes it feel and a likely clue that it is unjust on some level. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily protest it when it is your job to implement it. You can protest it as a legislator, you can protest it as a private citizen, and you can recuse yourself from the case rather than saying, I won't prosecute the case. And you can prosecute the case and not seek the death penalty, or you can prosecute the case and work for a deal with the defense to not have it be an execution. But to simply say, I'm not going to bring this person to trial because I don't believe in the death penalty, in my opinion, that was done, if I remember correctly, and I might be mistaken, like every day, was done more for publicity than for the actual justice of the person who was under trial.
Or maybe she wanted to put a point that we need to know the circumstance. Also, if you see someone shooting, what happened? Maybe it was under the influence of drugs, or maybe
self-defense,
or someone say, "Oh, kill these people," or "I kill your son." You never know. Maybe that's what she tried to say.
Which is something that does bear repeating. There was a case just recently in Israel where a man who'd been in jail for many years for murder was finally released because the court finally agreed that he had a right to self-defense. He was someone who had been assaulted repeatedly by the man that he murdered. And he was stopping him from abusing him over and over and over again. At the time of his trial, that was not considered sufficient justification. But he finally, on appeal, was able to be released. And they said, no, in your situation, yes, stopping the person who was doing this to you was self-defense. So, okay, very good. We will start chapter 2 next week. Sorry about the confusion.
No, that's very
Chapter 2 is a totally different concept, by the way. And we will be